What is going on? This is Splurge, the coach for your Bracknell Beedrills, bringing you PMC Season 6 Week 4. This week we are playing Oboe of the Houston Laxes. A frankly terrifying team. I'm pretty sure I'm going to say that for every single week, but this team really caused me a lot of issues when prepping. So Oboe's squad, so currently we are 2-1 and +3. I think we're kind of mid to higher up the table, doing relatively well, I like to think. We've had a couple of drops and a couple of switches around, which kind of has meant that everything's a little bit all over the place when it comes to how many games people have done. But so we're doing relatively well, I like to think. Oboe at this point is currently on a 1 and 2 with -5, I believe, differential, which is kind of surprising for the team because his squad is frankly just, give it an opportunity and it bites your arm off. So his squad is Megalatios, Excadrill, Hippowdon, Gyarados, Roserade, Arcanine, Aromatisse, Thunderous Therian, Skuntank, Rotom, and Marshtomp. Sand is something that my team really struggles to deal with, especially when there's an Excadrill around, because Bully has a hard time with it. And then of course you have Thunderous Therian, Gyarados, and Megalatios to complement that stupid defense, all of which are insane setup sweepers that are able to really chunk a team down. I was particularly worried about Megalatios because, again, it's another mon which my squad really struggles to deal with if it sets up a Dragon Dance. So I had to. It took me 2 goes at building this squad before I actually had something which both I and kind of the people who I have who helped me prep. I wouldn't necessarily count us as a front office because we all just kind of help each other out. But so of course. Shout out now to Sketch, Bash and Crypto because they are the people that carry me and make sure that I don't bring idiotic sets. They of course will be getting a huge shout out come the end of the season, no matter what, because I mean, they're insane. But so it kind of took us probably a couple hours to really realise where kind of the good stuff lay inside my squad. And so the first one that we actually ended up prepping with is Licky Licky. Originally I had like a squad with a Reflect type Tentacruel and stuff, but really it served no purpose and just prolonged the agony that was going to be an inevitable loss. Whereas Licky Licky is able to run Cloud9. Admittedly, there was a slight issue in the fact that it couldn't run Wish, so I ended up running Resto Chesto, Protect, Earthquake, Body Slam with Cloud9, max HP effectively, max defense with a slight creep just in case something decides to speed creep it. This was my anti-Excadrill just to kind of wait out the sand. And so, what with the calcs that we ran, if I clicked Protect on a Z, I definitely lived +2 Ironhead, Z Corkscrew Crash, whatever you want to call it, and then I was also able to safely take a Ironhead or an Earthquake at +2 as well. You'll understand why later on it also became even nicer. But so Earthquake, of course, is to do. It was 2-hit KOing Excadrill, I believe, and Body Slam is just stab priority, not stab priority, just stab attack. Catch him, I think, off guard if we can. So I mean, Resto Chesto, it was going to be Wish Protect, which would have been even better. But so I had to slightly change it due to the fact that isn't actually legal with Cloud9. The second one that we have is Human After All, as Sneasel. Choice banded this week. I've been reluctant to bring banded Sneasel because of how, as much as it hits like a train, there are some mons which can really hard stop this mon, and so this week though I felt it was necessary to really chunk Mega Latios with Ice Shard if it sets up. Knockoff as well does quite a lot, and Icicle Crash. Yeah, Icicle Crash just kind of destroys mons. It's Obo's decision what dies. Yeah, max attack. Jolly's creeping. What's it creeping? It's creeping the Mega Latios, I believe. Yeah, that's how we're going to do that. Gliscor is a Choice Scarf Sandveil set. A bit of heat this week. Offensive Gliscor. It's kind of a half anti-sand bring to abuse it ourselves. This thing can really chunk a Thundy T and a Gyarados with Stone Edge. It also does quite a lot with U-turn and Night Slash to Mega Latios. And a decent amount, it kind of blanket coverages the rest of his squad with both Stone Edge and Earthquake touching Arcanine. And it does a chunk to both Rotom and Skuntank with Night Slash and Earthquake. It's creeping a Gyarados, I believe, so that we still outspeed it at +1. We then move into Tapu Bulu. Babiri Berry, 212 HP, 172 defense. This is so that we could safely eat a neutral Corkscrew Crash, I believe. We're rocking with Leech Seed, Giga Drain, Focus Blast, Nature's Madness. This is just so he has Arcanine. If it comes in, intimidates us, it causes a couple of issues. We're really going for trying to preserve this mon's health, whilst also hurting stuff which it shouldn't really, I think. And so this is when kind of the prep gets nice. So Espeon is a screens set, Light Clay, Reflect, Light Screen, max speed, max HP, with Morning Sun and Psychic on the side. Oh my god. I was in two minds between choosing Psychic or Dazzling Gleam. Either way, I kind of got hard stopped by a Skuntank. But so in the end, I went with Psychic because we could then touch a Roserade if need be, and we were equally walled out by Excadrill and Mega Latios relatively easily. Either way that we went on it. And so finally, we have what is quickly becoming the MVP for the team, I feel. Glycepod, running Muscle Band, Aquajet Knockoff, First Impression, Liquidation. Relatively similar to the set I brought week 2. In fact, I think it might be the same set. No, because we had Rock Slide over Knockoff, I believe. Max HP, max attack. This thing is also just another thing which pressures his main offense. My real concern here with my prep was that I was very Gyarados weak. And so if it did come, I'd have to play especially carefully around it. But so I felt that screens were something that could really help me with that. But so as we get into the battle, what we see is that Obo's brought Marshtomp. That's something that I really wasn't expecting. Thunderous Therian, Mega Latios, the Sandcore, and Roserade. Now, so here I feel that Espeon can really put in some work with the Magic Bounce. Oh, yawning again. And so we have both Marshtomp and Roserade. Marshtomp, I felt relatively certain that it was going to be running Rocks, and Roserade was going to be running T-Spikes. So what I decided to do was actually lead Glycepod. I was planning to lead Glycepod to try and lure one of the two, presumably leads, to go for a hazard, and then switch in Espeon to be able to almost kind of catch him off guard with the magic bounce, because either rocks or T-spikes on the other side of the field was really quite nice for my squad, because it meant that we were doing a solid 25 to Thundy T if it switched in, and we're getting chip off versus everything else. So as we go into the battle now, we have a couple of seconds, blah blah blah, and yeah, Obo, your avatar's looking nice. I like it. I approve. But yeah, so we lead off with Touch It, our Glycopod, and so shiny Glycopod, pretty. And so he leads off with David, his Marsh Tom, and so correctly predicted that. And so what I choose to go for is I immediately switch into Espeon, because Glycopod can't actually touch Marsh Tom if it has Eviolite and its max defense. And so Marsh Tom does go for the Stealth Rocks. Nice prediction on my part, as so we now get the rocks up on his side. And so here I feel as if we're probably going to see a Megalatios switch in. So I immediately go for the Reflect, because I feel like a physical set is going to do a number on me. But Marsh Tom actually decides to just go for Earthquake. I believe it was a rolled 2-hit KO max HP. And so we see it do kind of around about 25, which is around about right. And so what we decide to do is we switch in Gliscor, because I think that Megalatios is coming in here almost certainly. But Thundy T comes out, which is even nicer. As so Stone Edge should kill from this range with Stealth Rocks. But so he decides to double out into the Latios. Another Mon, which actually takes a decent amount from Stone Edge. And so we've now put it under half, which is really quite nice. And so we decided to switch out, because we can't actually kill it, but it can definitely kill us back. So we switch back into the Glycopod, as Obo withdraws the Latios as well. And so we see Marshtomp come back out again. And of course there's only one switch into Marshtomp at this point. It is still, of course, Espeon. So if he decides to go for Rocks again, it just does nothing. But he actually decides to go for the Toxic, which is also really quite nice, because we now have a Toxic Marshtomp. And so at this point it of course puts quite a bulky Mon on a timer. And so here I feel as if it's probably time to go for the Light Screen, I believe, as he switches in Megalatios this time again. And so what we see here, we see the Light Screen from us, and so we can't really touch Megalatios at this point, and we're still kind of worried that it might set up in our faces, which might be less than ideal. But so we're relatively certain that Glycopod can take a hit from Latios, whatever. Oh, and so what we see is that Megalatios megas up now, and he goes for the default. Nice prep on Obo's part. It means that he clears the screens from our side, and also the Stealth Rocks from his side. Generally, just a nice move to cancel out the momentum that I was having. And so what I decided to do is I click Knock Off with Glycopod, and so it did a decent amount of damage to Megalatios. But it also could it does neutral damage across the board to his team. He switches in Marshtomp, so it loses the Eviolite. We then switch out back into Espeon, because still I'm not letting Stealth Rocks go up on my side. So if Stealth Rocks go up on my side, then it puts Sneasel and Glycopod on a timer. So the number of times that they're able to switch it, which is an issue. Thankfully though, Marshtomp goes for Earthquake. I mean, I say thankfully, it's not really thankfully, because it's 2-hit KO on us from the health that we were at. I go for the Morning Sun, as Marshtomp goes for the Skull, presumably to just kind of see what sort of damage it can pick off, or whether or not we were going to switch into Gliscor, which is a decent read. We go for the Reflect though, as we predict that we're probably going to get an Earthquake, as this Marshtomp's trying to get the most damage off before it dies, which it does go for, and we have gone for the Reflect, so it doesn't KO us. And so Marshtomp goes down to its own poison. Another yawn. Oh. But yeah, so we now see the Thundy T come in. I go for the Morning Sun because if it's gonna, I'm not sure whether it was a Zmon. Let's quickly check. No, it's not a Zmon. But so we're gonna see that. So see how much damage this Thunderbolt does. We live on 1. We probably shouldn't have lived on 1, considering that this is Life Orb, as we've just found out. I was mildly concerned that, so if it didn't show a Life Orb, then if it killed us, it would be Specs. If it didn't kill us, it would be Scarf, which is good information to know. But so we go for the light screen now, as I feel as if Espeon has done its job for the most part. And so we're able to switch into Sneasel here, where so nothing takes this Icicle Crash well. Just nothing at all. This is a Sneasel that is able to outspeed everything apart from if Roserade is Scarf, which it still could viably be at this point, but I just feel that it would have been switched in at some point, like versus the Gliscor, to really pressure it. And so we are 2-hit KOing this Hippowdon, which is really quite nice. We knock it down to about 30%. And so the Hippowdon switches out immediately again into the Mega Latios. So he decides to sack the Mega Latios, which is another very good thing off the board. I am perpetually scared of Mega Latios because in a previous life, well, not in a previous life, but in previous games, it's been something that I've slept on and it's just set up and reverse swept. Now, here we see the Excadrill come out. I'm relatively certain that it's just going to click Sword Stance because it's an obvious switch on my part. And actually I want to switch to be able to get into my sand counter, or my sand check as it were. And so Excadrill does indeed go for Sword Stance as we go for the, as we switch into Licky Licky Burning. I think that how I played this is correct, so I was able to get the damage off Excadrill early, which is better than trying to hold off, because I was able to take this plus an Iron Head or an Earthquake and then be able to rest up. Whereas if I protected followed by Earthquake, I couldn't actually take 2 Iron Heads in a row, so I couldn't have rested and got myself back up to full health. So what we see here is the Corkscrew Crash followed by the Earthquake, so that we're now both in 2-hit KO range. The thing is though, is the Iron Head, whilst under Reflect, doesn't kill me. So I go for the rest. That was it. So if I went for the Protect followed by the Earthquake followed by the rest would have been out of Reflect, which was an issue. So I went for the Earthquake instead, and so we get the rest off there. Rest of Chesto pops, and so we're now out of Sand and out of Reflect. So I was going to switch in my Gliscor here because if he goes for an Earthquake or an Iron Head, I can chunk it. But he decides to switch into Thundy T as well. And so this was a nice point to reveal that I am in fact Scarf, and I'm able to take out the Thunderous. Which is another big issue that was taken off the table. So we're now down to just the Suncore plus Roserade. And so because we've revealed that we're Scarf, it's a good point for the Hippowdon to switch in. And to be able to get a Slack off. I was relatively certain that he was going to click Slack off instead of switch directly into Excadrill. So I switched in Tapu Bulu, and Tapu Bulu either way is able to take a hit from Excadrill. But so the Hippowdon does go for the Slack off. And so here we get into a point where it's kind of a little bit tit for tat because I wasn't sure whether or not the Roserade was going to come in. So I think you'll see me click Nature's Madness a couple times before clicking Giga Drain. So we see the Nature's Madness this time. That's my stomach gurgling. As in fact the Hippowdon goes for Ice Fang, which is an interesting choice. It's a nice set of prep on the Hippowdon because it manages to catch the Gliscor off guard, and also I don't have a dragon type, so ignore what I was about to say. And so what we see here is the Hippowdon is switched out into Excadrill because he thinks that I'm going to go for the Nature's Madness, but in fact I have gone for the Giga Drain. because it was able to KO the Hippowdon from half, and actually was also able to KO the Excadrill from half, I believe, as well. The crit didn't matter to a certain extent, I believe. So we still KO'd the Excadrill come what may inside grassy terrain. If not, I could take a hit because I was Babiri Berry. But so Roserade comes in at this point, and so I switch into Gliscor because I want to get some form of U-turn off. Either that, or actually after kind of thinking, I actually wanted to just sack off the Gliscor here. So once Sneasel is in, Sneasel wins. But so I go for the Earthquake to get some damage off on this, and so he goes for the Giga Drain, which nearly KOs us, but not quite. The HP coming in clutch, because I think I need some form of damage on the Roserade to KO with Icicle Crash. So we go for the Earthquake again, because we're expecting to be sacked off. But for whatever reason, we see a second set of Toxic Spikes. And so my kind of thoughts here is now Obo's switching into kind of a stalling it out process here. And so we actually see that the Hippowdon switches in. And so I've gone for Earthquake, but it is definitely not 2-hit KOing from this range. So we get into an interesting state of the game where I now decided to switch back into Tapu Bulu because it is able to 1v1 the Hippowdon. Oh wait, no, I go for Earthquake again because I'm still trying to sack off. But yeah, so what we see here is that so the Hippowdon goes for Slack Off. So it's really trying to go for the stalling out my squad's kind of phase. So I decided to switch in Tapu Bulu instead of just slacking this off, because I feel as if the slack off is going to come through for the Hippowdon. If you haven't noticed, I'm perpetually tired whenever I do these videos now. And so the Hippowdon does go for the Ice Fang effect. So probably going for the switch was less than ideal because it now prolongs the game just that little bit longer. However, it does preserve differential. So at this point, I'm free to go for a Giga Drain of some sort or a Nature's Madness. I'm not going to click Leech Seed because that's counterintuitive in case the Roserade switches in. So I go for the Giga Drain to get back the majority of my health. It's doing a 2-hit KO. He just clicks Ice Fang again, which is absolutely fine. So at this point, I'm now calcing, whilst being relatively certain that I can KO this Hippowdon, what I'm going to do to now try and preserve. I now actually want to go for the 5-0 if I can. And so I'm calculating to see what can take a hit and return back. A hit without dying to Roserade, and so the mon that I think about is actually Gliscor, because it's a win-win situation. Where so if I'm able to live, take a hit, take the toxic whilst getting the grassy terrain back, I'm able to go for first impression, which comfortably KOs. Alternatively, if he goes for the Giga Drain and it puts me into emergency exit range, then I'm able to switch in the Sneasel, which is then safely KOing. So I switch in the Gliscor to take the poison. The Roserade goes for Sludge Bomb, which doesn't actually put us into emergency exit range plus poison. So what we see here is that I'm able to pick up the W. It's a 5-0 win versus Obo after the first impression carrying the Roserade. I'm really, really happy with how this game played out. So it was a game that I could have lost quite badly if the Mega Latios had actually managed to set up, or if the Thunderous Therian managed to set up, or if somehow I managed to play the Sand poorly. GG Obo. This is a hard game to prep. This is a very hard game to prep. I believe week 5. So we're now. So that of course is something else. We are now 3-1 and +8. And so week 5 we play one of the unbeaten teams in Phantom Base, coach of the New York Cosmos. Cosmogs. Yeah, I'm saying it right. Who's 4-0 and is doing a really good job. His team is also quite frightening. Let me quickly check what his squad is. No, I'm going the wrong way. Where are you? Where are you, Phantom Base? His squad is quite frightening. Oh yeah, no, it's I have to play a second Mega Medicham after week 2. I have to play Medicham again. We're also playing versus a Clefable, a Garchomp, and a Ferrothorn. Those are just his first 4 ones, and they are frightening as anything. But yeah, so thank you everybody for watching. I hope you all have a solid week. Hopefully this gets put up on time instead of late, like week 3, because I'm actually now recording at a reasonable time and actually being able to get everything done. But yeah, so have a good week, everybody. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.